My dad transferred $4.6 million out of my Sberbank account and wired it to my sister without telling me. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just said, "It's my responsibility to secure her future." That sentence destroyed my family. Stick with me. I found out on a quiet Tuesday morning in my apartment. I was drinking coffee, checking balances the way I always did. I've always been careful with money. I don't live flashy. I track everything. That's why my stomach dropped when I saw the number. Or rather, when I didn't see it. Almost all of my money was gone. At first, I thought it had to be fraud. A hack. Some system error. The account had held my inheritance and the returns from years of early investments. I refreshed the page 3 times. Then I saw the transfer details. One wire. One name. Maribel Whitmore. My younger sister. My hand started shaking. I called the bank. They confirmed it was authorized. My name wasn't on the authorization, but my father's access code was. I hung up and sat there, staring at the wall, trying to make it make sense. I called my dad, Gordon. He answered like nothing was wrong. When I asked him what he'd done, there was a pause. Just one. Then he said it, calm and steady, like he was explaining the weather. "She needs it more than you." No apology. No warning. No hesitation. He told me Maribel's future wasn't secure. That she was struggling. That as a father, he had to step in. When I asked why he didn't ask me first, he said, "You're strong. You'll recover." That's when it hit me. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't panic or confusion. It was a decision made without me about me. In that moment, I realized I wasn't a daughter to protect. I was a resource to use that I flew back home 3 days later. I didn't tell them I was coming. I needed to see their faces when I asked the questions in person. On the plane, I kept replaying my father's words in my head, hoping I'd misunderstood them. I hadn't. We sat at the old dining table like nothing had changed. My dad looked calm, almost relieved that we could finally talk. Maribel sat across from me, hands folded in her lap, staring at a crack in the wood. She didn't say my name once. I asked my father why he chose her. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't get defensive. That somehow made it worse. "She's fragile," he said. "She acts before she thinks. She needs protection." Then he looked at me and added, "You're different. You're disciplined. You always land on your feet." I asked him if that made it okay to take from me. He sighed and said, "Because you're strong enough to lose it." That was when I understood something I'd never allowed myself to see. In his mind, I was never the child to be protected. I was the safety net, the backup plan, the one who could be drained because I'd survive. I turned to Maribel and asked if she knew. She didn't answer at first. Her eyes stayed down. Then she nodded once. No apology. No explanation. Just acceptance. My father admitted they had talked about this for months. They planned it. They weighed options. They decided I wouldn't fight too hard. That I'd understand. I felt something shift inside me. The shock was fading, replaced by a cold, quiet awareness. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about a family that had already chosen sides long before I ever saw the transfer. The days after that were heavy and slow. We ate dinner together, but no one talked about the money unless I brought it up. My father discussed normal things like work and neighbors, as if my life hadn't just been split in two. Maribel laughed at the right moments, but she never looked at me. Sitting there, I started thinking about our childhood in a way I never had before. I was the one told to figure things out on my own. If I failed, it was a lesson. If I succeeded, it was expected. They called me mature and independent, like those were gifts. No one ever asked if I was tired of being strong. Maribel was different. When she made mistakes, someone stepped in. Bills were paid. Excuses were made. She was protected from the full weight of her choices. I told myself it was just because she was younger. Now I knew better. One evening, I caught her alone in the kitchen. I asked her quietly if she knew where the money came from. She froze. For a moment, I thought she might lie. Then she said yes. She said she knew it was mine. I asked her why she accepted it. She shrugged like it was obvious. "I thought you'd be fine," she said. "You always are." That hurt more than anything my father had said. He had his excuses, his twisted sense of duty. But Maribel's answer was simple. She believed my strength meant my loss didn't matter. In that moment, I saw our roles clearly. She was the one allowed to fall. I was the one expected to stand, no matter the cost. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just nodded and walked away, knowing something between us had broken in a way that couldn't be repaired. When I flew back home, the house felt different. Quieter. Safer in a strange way. No voices explaining things away. No one telling me to be understanding. Just space to think. I opened my laptop and pulled out every record I had. Bank statements. Old emails. Estate documents I hadn't looked at in years. The Sberbank account had been set up after my inheritance came through, back when I was still learning and trusted my father with everything. That trust was the crack he used. Buried in the paperwork was a clause that gave him limited access. It was meant for emergencies only. Medical. Legal. Something urgent where I couldn't act myself. At the time, it felt responsible. Smart, even. I never imagined he'd define my sister's lifestyle as an emergency. The transfer followed the rules exactly as written. No forged signatures. No broken laws. Just a careful step through a door I'd left unlocked years ago. Seeing it in black and white made my chest ache, but it also cleared my head. This wasn't a crime. It was worse. It was a choice made by someone who knew me well enough to use my own caution against me. Someone who knew I wouldn't check for betrayal, only for mistakes. I sat there for hours, tracing dates and approvals, watching the story form on the screen. Each document stripped away another layer of denial. There would be no easy fix. No bank reversal. No authority to call and make it right. The grief didn't disappear, but it changed. It hardened into something clean and sharp. I finally understood the situation for what it was. They hadn't broken the law. They had broken trust. And once I saw that clearly, I stopped feeling lost. I tried one last time. I called my father and asked him to return the money. I said it calmly, clearly, without anger. I explained that it wasn't just about the funds. It was about fairness, trust, respect. I thought maybe, just maybe, he would see reason. He didn't. He spoke in that same quiet, steady tone, like he was lecturing a student. "Elena," he said, "I'm securing her future. You're strong. You'll recover. This isn't about fairness. It's about responsibility." I tried again. I reminded him that I had built my life with discipline, that I had trusted him with this account, that nothing justified taking what was mine. But he didn't budge. He didn't apologize. He didn't hesitate. Then came Maribel. She sent a message later that day. Carefully worded. Polite. Detached. She wrote that she had already committed the money to a plan she couldn't change. No excitement. No guilt. No hint that she understood the damage she had caused. That was it. I stopped asking. I realized in that moment that they weren't going to explain. They weren't going to see it my way. Their minds were made up months ago, and I had been excluded from the process entirely. Trying to reach them, trying to appeal to logic or love, was pointless. So I stopped. I cut off the emotional access I had been giving both of them. I stopped sharing, stopped explaining, stopped expecting recognition. If they wanted to rewrite the rules without me, that was fine. I would play by my own rules now. Quietly. Carefully. Strategically. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't plead. I would wait. And I would win. I didn't show my anger. I didn't call or write. I didn't argue. I didn't need to. Instead, I started quietly. I opened old files, reviewed investments, and contacted people I had worked with years ago. People who trusted me, who respected my judgment. I went through every detail I remembered about the money my father had taken. Every account, every plan, every weak spot. I knew the structure better than anyone else. I thought about my father. He had always relied on me for guidance, for decisions he wasn't confident making. He dismissed it as help, but I remembered how often he had asked me to fix mistakes, to untangle issues he didn't want to face. Then I thought about Maribel. She had never followed through on anything important. Her plans were big in words but fragile in action. She relied on other people to hold her up. I could see exactly where cracks would appear. I made a plan, but it wasn't about being loud or dramatic. I didn't need confrontation. I didn't need to prove anything to them. I just needed patience, strategy, and knowledge. Every move I made built quietly on what I already knew. I leveraged contacts, old insights, and the same financial instincts that had grown my own savings over the years. I anticipated their errors, their assumptions, their overconfidence. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's quiet, careful, slow, like water carving stone. My father thought I would recover and move on. My sister thought I would be fine. They had forgotten one thing. I never forget. And now I was ready. Not with anger, but with a plan that would make their mistakes catch up to them. They had underestimated me. They had assumed patience meant weakness. They were about to learn that patience could be far more dangerous, that I stayed quiet and kept my distance. I didn't reach out. I didn't check in. I just let things unfold while I watched from the sidelines. It didn't take long. Maribel's carefully planned future started showing cracks. She trusted the wrong people, made decisions without thinking them through, and relied on her father's guidance that had once been solid but now wavered. Projects she had committed to stalled. Contracts slipped. People she depended on started questioning her judgment. My father noticed first. He called me one evening, his voice unusually hesitant. He didn't apologize. He didn't try to explain. He asked for advice. Small, careful questions about investments and decisions he should have handled himself. I listened, but I said nothing. I offered no help, no guidance, no reassurance. Maribel tried to reach me once, too. A short message asking for suggestions, looking for a lifeline. I ignored it. She had assumed I would always be there, silently correcting mistakes and covering gaps. That assumption was gone now. The shift wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting or confrontation. It was quiet, almost invisible. But it was real. Slowly, the balance of power changed. They realized the person they had dismissed, the one they assumed would survive anything, was the one holding everything together all along. I wasn't just patient. I was steady. I didn't interfere. I didn't force consequences. I just let their poor choices meet reality. And reality didn't care about excuses or family titles. It only cared about truth. By the time they looked up, they understood. The one they had underestimated, the one they thought they could drain and control, had the real power. And they had no one to blame but themselves. That I finally agreed to meet my father alone. I wanted no distractions, no interruptions, no excuses hiding behind Maribel's presence. I walked into the familiar study, the air thick with old smells of leather and books, and sat across from him. He looked nervous, a rare crack in his usual calm. For the first time, I think he realized he might have miscalculated. I just wanted to do what's best for the family, he started, his voice steady but strained. I thought I was protecting Maribel. It's my duty as a father. I leaned back and listened, letting the words settle. Then I spoke calmly, slowly, every word measured. Protecting her? You think taking my life savings and giving it to her is protection? He shifted uncomfortably but tried to continue. You're strong, Elena. You'll recover. You understand, don't you? I shook my head. No, I don't. You didn't secure Maribel's future. You just sacrificed mine. You didn't choose to protect a daughter. You chose someone to exploit. Someone you assumed would survive anything while you solved all her problems for her. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried another angle. But she needs guidance. She's fragile. Fragile, I said quietly, but the words cut. She's fragile because you've sheltered her from consequences her entire life. And I was strong only because I had no choice. That's not protection. That's using me as a buffer so your golden child could live without risk. He went silent then, staring at the desk. I could see it, the first real doubt. He had never looked at me this way, never realized the consequences of his choices. For the first time, he understood. I wasn't a daughter to protect. I was a resource he had drained. And I was done being anyone's backup. I didn't get the $4.6 million back. Not directly. But that didn't matter. I had spent months quietly rebuilding, planning, and taking control in ways my father and sister hadn't expected. I used my knowledge, my contacts, and my discipline to create new investments, partnerships, and opportunities. Every move was careful, every step legal and ethical, but powerful. Slowly, my financial life grew stronger than it had ever been. I wasn't chasing what was taken. I was building something better, something that couldn't be touched by anyone else's choices. Gordon called occasionally, asking for advice, small favors, or opinions, like he had before. I didn't answer. Maribel tried too, sending messages full of explanations, excuses, even hints of apology. I left them unread. The safety net they had always relied on, the one I had been, was gone. I set boundaries that were firm and clear. No loans. No guidance. No emotional rescue. I had learned that my willingness to protect them had been treated as permission to exploit me. I wouldn't allow that again. It was strange, at first, to feel this distance. But as days passed, I felt a calm I hadn't known in years. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I was free. They were struggling now, financially and emotionally, and for the first time, they realized that I wasn't theirs to lean on. The daughter they had assumed would always fix mistakes, the sister who would always step in, it wasn't me anymore. I had lost nothing that mattered. I had gained clarity, independence, and the kind of strength no one could take from me. The lesson was clear. They had chosen Maribel, but I had chosen myself. And that choice made all the difference that I sat in my apartment, the city lights outside glowing like tiny promises. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even thinking about revenge. I was just resolved. The betrayal had cut deep, but it had also shown me something I hadn't fully understood before: my worth. Not the worth my father or sister assigned to me, not the value measured by money or obedience, but my own. I didn't need anyone's permission to see it, to live by it, to protect it. Sometimes my father's voice echoed in my mind. She's strong enough to lose it. I could hear him just as clearly as the day he said it, like a warning that was meant to hurt. But it didn't anymore. His words had lost their power. They were just words, empty now because I had learned that my life, my choices, my boundaries belonged to me alone. Maribel would always be her father's golden child. That was their world. I was no longer part of it. I had tried to reason, to appeal, to remind them of fairness and trust, but they had chosen her, and in doing so, they had chosen to exclude me. I smiled quietly to myself. That exclusion had given me something they could never take away: freedom. I had secured my future. I had rebuilt my life stronger, smarter, and more independently than I ever could have imagined. I closed the chapter on them. Not with bitterness, not with hatred, but with clarity. While they had secured Maribel's future, I had secured my own. And that, I realized, was enough. The cost of their choice was the end of our relationship. But the cost of my choice was the beginning of everything I had always wanted. I chose me. And that was final. If you faced betrayal or financial misuse, remember, knowledge, patience, and clear boundaries are your strongest tools. Learn to protect your assets, understand legal and ethical safeguards, and prioritize self-worth over approval. Take control of your life like Elena. Your independence is your most valuable inheritance.